Hello, and welcome to this week's look at action and stunts on film and television. How are you? I hope you're well. You look very well, even though it's possibly been a taxing week, but well done you for getting this far and coming all the way through it. We're going back in time again this week to a year that we've been to quite a lot, 1978. A lot of good movies came out in 78. We've looked at a bunch of them already. This one is a very interesting movie because a lot of people say that it's actually based on a great deal of fact. But it's a movie starring Gregory Peck and Laurence Olivier, and is called The Boys from Brazil. No, it's not about the 1970 World Cup side, no. It's about Nazis and the possibility of creating the Fourth Reich with the DNA of Adolf. So that's where it probably starts and ends, as the case may be. But it's also interesting from an action perspective because it's a very small stunt team. 3 performers, Dinny Powell, Eddie Powell, no relation, and Del Baker. Now, you think, well, in that case, there's not a great deal of action. Then there isn't a great deal of action. I mean, there is a lot of work involved in this, but there is a rogue element. And how can I explain this? There's a fight sequence at the end which we will look at, and we'll come back to it afterwards. But there's more than the allotted 3 stunt performers clearly working on the film, and the 4th one hasn't got a credit, evidently, because it's none of those individuals. It's quite an odd one. I'm not quite sure. I haven't even got to the bottom of it, so I'm relying on information received. But there are a number of things to factor in to this picture, one of which is the fact that Laurence Olivier was not very well during the production of this movie. He had kidney stones. Anybody who's ever had kidney stones knows that they're quite debilitating. And doctors will say, oh, don't worry, you just have to pass them normally. What? How do you pass a kidney stone normally? There's no way out. Really, you know. So he's gone through that. Also, he has had quite a serious leg issue, which he's had to try and sort out, and a hip problem as well. So he was actually quite ill during the course of production, but had made it very clear that he wanted to do a number of movies to try and keep himself and Ms. Plowright in, the style in which they become accustomed. Now, take all of that into consideration, and then you read the character that he is playing, Lieberman, who is a Nazi hunter, and he must read the script and then notice, oh good, there's a huge fight at the end of the movie. Now, he's pretty keen on doing an awful lot of that, as is Gregory Peck, who, incidentally, this is, I think, the first time that he's really played a villain on screen, or certainly a character that is out of character for him. Gregory Peck is normally the dashing hero. But on this occasion, he is very, very much a villain. He plays Dr. Mengele, Joseph Mengele, a real character, and plays it very, very well, I think, anyway. In fact, James Mason wanted the role, who's in the movie playing a different character. But more importantly, George C. Scott was actually signed for the movie to play Joseph Mengele. Can you imagine that? George C. Scott playing Mengele. I don't think it would have worked. And for reasons better known to somebody else, he had to pull out of the project later on. And consequently, Gregory Peck stepped in. Olivier was on from day one, from way back the year before. So, all of this taken into consideration, and it's physical. There's a lot of physicality going on. We're going to explore that, and we will come back afterwards and try and fill in some of the blanks. Here we go. So, The Boys from Brazil, 1978, and we're going to start firstly with identifying Dave Brandon, who plays Schmidt during this. You may recognise Dave. A lot of bits and pieces that he's familiar with, particularly many Bond fans will know that he was responsible for the fiery firefall inside the La Paras in The Spy Who Loved Me. That's Dave on fire jumping off the stairs. So, killing Doring. This is Doring. Doring has been drinking in the afternoon and is now cycling away, quite happy to go home to his wife, or whatever it is he does. This character has been asked to remove him, and I mean permanently. En route back home, he decides to stop off at a bottling company. Now, there's a reason for this. He's in need of a pee. Happens to us all. Overdo it and think, oh, I'll just pop in here and have a quick whiz before I go home. Now, the situation here is that your man here is finding this a perfect opportunity to go in and kill himself. And in he comes, crash, straight in through the bottles. And on the other side is stuntman Del Baker, who is doubling the actor. Lofquist, very different piece of killing. Walter Gotel is the actor who has been, or the character who has been sent to kill a particular individual. Lofquist is in point discussing, look, you don't have to not do it. And plus the fact I know him. I'll do it for you if you like, or I'll point him out. And he says, it's not him. It's you. And barrels him over the edge. Now, this is Eddie Powell doing this part of the fall. Tricky because he's got to go backwards and he's going to push away from the wall as he gets further down, and that's the fall completed. Then they cut away to a dummy doing the big job from the dam. Quite impressive too. Doesn't hit the wall on the way down, does it? Oh, just there, yeah, just the once. And then into the snow at the bottom. Splosh. Now, so Walter Gotel's character has done the killing, right? Here is a Nazi buffet. That's Josef Mengele. And your man, there's Walter at the thing. Mengele then decides, what are you doing here? You should have been off killing so-and-so. He hasn't been told that he's done the job and has come back. Which infuriates Mengele, who gives him the whole pointy finger thing and you're a traitor, etc. Now, what he does here is fascinating. Grabs hold of him, Walter Gotel, now backwards, lifts himself, jumps off the floor, and big flat back, boom, right into the buffet table. I tell you what, that's not easy to do for anybody, stunt people particularly, but also as an actor. The underside of that table will have padding on it. He may have something on his back. But I tell you what, that's pretty special, the two of them. Look, he's covered in cake. I love the fact they threw this into the picture. And then everybody's rushing round to try and... there's a scene afterwards where they say to him, it's okay. And he goes, why didn't you tell me? You know. Anyway, enjoyed that. Mengele versus Vlok. Now, Vlok is a character that turns up towards the end of the picture. If you haven't seen the movie, go and see it. Right? It'll make a lot more sense. But Josef Mengele has decided that they can quite happily get on without this particular character because his son Bobby is key to the story itself. His son Bobby is one of those boys from Brazil. So he says, right, you, off. Go to the cellar. And he presumably knows already what's going on. This is also where the final part of the movie will take place. And there will be a bit of a hoo-ha in the front room. Mengele says to him, right, open that door. And again, the interiors, I believe, the way in which, even though there's quite a bit of location work on this, all the interiors in this film were done in the UK. Hence, UK stunt performers. Backs him into the cellar, the top of the cellar steps. Nobody puts the lights on in this thing. I mean, and he's putting the lights on. I beg your pardon. I didn't think he did. And you're not going to kill me, are you? Or something along those lines. And Mengele says, well, as a matter of fact, yes, I am. And he's going to deliver the blow. Here we go. Points the gun, bang, gives him that one there, turns him around, one in the back, and Eddie Powell now does the fall, bosh, into the bottom there, and a nice job. And then the silhouette, because silhouette's quite eerie, and then the slowly closing the door. Finally, it's Mengele versus Lieberman. Lieberman is, of course, Laurence Olivier, not expecting to open the door and find Josef Mengele sat there. And look at the shock and horror on his face. Dr. Lieberman, you know. Right, now, coming across the floor, that's Del Baker. Olivier, you know, not very well at this stage, as we'll discuss later on. The dogs are in there. There's a couple of situations here as far as doubling is concerned. Dogs are barking, guns are going off, pushes him across the floor. Now, that's Eddie Powell doubling Gregory Peck, without a question. And there is a second situation whereby that's Dinny Powell doubling Laurence Olivier. But then when it cuts back again, they're doing nibbling the wrists. Now, I have absolutely no idea who this is, and I've spoken to Dinny's family, Greg and Gary and Tilly, and they don't know who it is either. So, and there's only 3 stuntmen named on the picture, and it's not any of the 3 that are on the movie. I'm very confused. So if anybody does want to shed any light on it, do by all means. There's ear biting. This fight's very peculiar. Maybe this is the way that men of a certain age fought, maybe perhaps, you know, scratching and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, he's managed to get him to one side. The dogs are barking, and then there will be a moment where he's sitting down in the chair. He races across to try and get the door open, let the dogs out. There's a little blood squib in, it's quite well packed, this wrist here. Fires the gun, and you just see it going off. Now, there it goes. That's quite impressive, but it's built into the sleeve, a little bit of padding, and maybe that was how some of the dog attack was done, because Peck was very clear that he was set upon by the dogs, although the handler was telling them to fetch him back to them. Jumps up, right, bitten in the arms. That moment there is very peculiar, where he bites away from his neck. The instruction, of course, was that they were fetching him. This is the big kill at the end. And there's a double involved here as well. It's not all Gregory Peck. It's very brutal. I've left the sound off because the sound makes it even more eerier, to be fair with you. It really does. And that's Bobby Vlock. And the dogs are finishing Mengele off by chewing certain... And the wounds are horrific. But again, only 3 stuntmen working on the picture. It's well edited, but we have a rogue individual in the middle. Here's the credit at the end of the picture. Eddie Powell, Dinny Powell, not related, Del Baker. But there is absolutely no information regarding the other double, because it isn't any of those 3. So, yeah, interesting that should happen, but, you know, not all the information is there. I was lucky to find that it had a stunt credit, to be perfectly honest with you. But anyway, onward and upward. So you see from that you've got Eddie Powell doubling for Gregory Peck. You've also got Dinny Powell doing some doubling for Laurence Olivier, and Del Baker. That opening shot when he comes in through the door, sets eyes on Mengele and then walks towards him. So you've got Del Baker doing that. And then you've got this other guy. And not a clue. I mean, I've asked, I said, I thought it was Dinny, you see. If he's in one sequence, then maybe he's in the rest of it. But I checked with Greg Powell and Tilly and just made some double checks along the way, and they said, it's not Dinny. And I went, okay, if it's not Dinny, who the hell is it? Nobody knows at this stage. If anybody out there knows who it is, then please, by all means, drop a note there in the comments, and we'll try and get to the bottom of it. But there's 3 stunt performers credited on the picture, and there's very clearly 4 in the movie, and we don't know where the other guys come from. And again, we work on the basis that it's a stunt performer. It could be a stand-in, but then there's no record of who the stand-ins are, so it's very tricky. So all of that taken into consideration, then you've got the dog attack itself. And this was the interesting factor for me, because Gregory Peck, as you've heard in the podcast on Wednesday, said that the dog handler would go into set, he would walk on, and he would grab Peck's sleeve and would say to the dog, fetch, fetch. And they would come in, they would grab the sleeve, and then the way it was filmed made it look as though there was an attack. Then he had the tie around his neck, and he said he had a knot, and the dog would come in and fetch the tie. Really? Now, these Dobermans, part of the problem over the years was that Dobermans have got a bad rap, They're always portrayed as the evil, nasty, angry, frothing-at-the-mouth dog, those and Rottweilers, And that wasn't always the case. These particular dogs, very well trained. I don't know whether these are the same dogs that have appeared in other movies during that period of time. Most likely. There was a Doberman Gang movie, I seem to remember. Was Fred Astaire in that? I think he was. But probably the same dogs. And then, but this, and the Doberman, if you look at it, has a very long nose, and maybe getting in to grab hold of the knot of a tie. It's not, undoable, the knot, I mean, as opposed to impossible, it's not impossible. But it's still, nevertheless, it's something very, very intricate. And I know that these dogs are spectacular, and they're very, very talented and trained to the last detail, but that's a very, very special kind of job. And I wondered, and I've had a look of some of the footage there, and I wonder if one of these dogs is actually a hand puppet or a animatronic dog. It's just the way in which the movement is happening. There's a moment or two there where it just looks to be slightly awkward, But fascinating stuff. And if you haven't seen the movie, go and see it. It's well worth a look. It's a cracking watch. Terrific performances by all involved. Walter Gotel going through that table. Gregory Peck, they've obviously worked it out. And my understanding is that one of the 3 stuntmen, because there's no official arranger on the picture, stunt arranger, so presumably anyone who was available, all the interiors were filmed in Britain. Okay, they went to locations, but all the interiors were filmed in Britain. And at some point, they said, right, this is the deal, and you're going to have to work it between the 2 of you, and we're going to put padding under the table, and we're going to, put bits and pieces on here and that, and then, bang, right through the table. Well, that's evidently what's gone on. So he's very clearly gone at him like a scalded cat, got hold of him and lifted him up for Walter Gotel to get up off his feet and go flat back through that table. It's very impressive. There's no double involved there. That's very clearly Walter doing that. There have been a number of stories where, obviously Walter might take a snifter for luck. And I dare say that if there were any injuries, apart from being covered in cake, schnitzel and whatever else was available on the table, I dare say that got him through. But very impressive stuff, and for Gregory Peck and him to work that out between the two of them, cracking job. So go and see the film. It's available on YouTube. You can watch it quite happily. There's a very good HD version on there as well if you're that way inclined. So go and do that, check it out, and we'll regroup next week. I think that's the best thing to do. Oh, and incidentally, if you are social media savvy, we've got all the social media channels, right? The Facebook and the Instagram and the Twitter. But if you are of the TikTok generation, you will find that we've just started on there. Behind the Stunts on TikTok. The logo is the same. Go and check it out and find some videos on there and me doing a bit of narration and just general bits and pieces. So have a look, explore those. They'll try and do something new every day. And, well, until next time, we will see you again. Bye for now.